new breach. This is from DoorDash, and they have actually experienced a couple breaches off and on in the last few years. So let's go into this. This one was basically a phishing attack. So on October 25th, someone gained access to their systems. The information provided indicates that it was a phishing attack, and a single employee was the victim of this phishing email, and it cascaded from there. So some of the terms and acronyms that will pop up in any of the information, especially in the Bleeping Computer article, include the following. So social engineering. And so basically this is a trick where they scam you and they trick you into believing what they're telling you, and you provide information that you probably should not have provided. And then phishing and vishing, it's basically the fraudulent attempt. Phishing is email, vishing is voice to steal credentials. And then TTP. This is an acronym you'll hear as you progress through your cybersecurity adventure. That stands for tactics, techniques, and procedures, and it's part of an attacker's method. And you can read more about that on the MITRE attack site. MFA is multi-factor authentication, so that's basically using two different ways of logging in to your accounts. All right, so what data was exposed? DoorDash is indicating that it was your name, your email, and your address. And tidbit or important piece of information, they did not explain or let people know about this for about 19 days. So the contact information, phone numbers, and physical delivery addresses were accessed, as was telling you. So it's personal information. So your name, your contact information, and who was affected. It actually was kind of a mix, and I think they notified the Canadian population first. All right, so the threat actor, who and why. Right now, nobody seems to know who the unauthorized third party was. And basically, again, it was a tactic that was from social engineering. They basically tricked some unsuspecting employee. And so the firewalls and network security were bypassed. So what is social engineering? So it's impersonation. The attacker is likely posed as a trusted source and, again, trick them. So it's hard to keep reiterating these terms, but they're important to keep speaking. Phishing, vishing. The information that was provided makes everyone believe that this was a phishing email or a voice attack, which is a vishing email. And then they bypass security. The goal is to obtain legitimate credentials. Once the attacker has a valid username and password, they can walk right in the front door, rendering many technical defenses useless. And so what is some of the mitigation and prevention? So DoorDash's response is basically they said that they have engaged a forensics team. They deployed enhancements to their security systems. And again, this has happened to them recently, but through different holes in their processes. And most critically, they claim they implemented additional training for employees to recognize and report social engineering attempts. So your best practices are always to be skeptical of unsolicited requests, especially if there's some urgency or if they're acting like if they pose as a higher level employee with influence and they start pressuring you or they start acting mad or whatever. Although you may have bosses like that, that may be a red flag. And then, of course, use multi-factor authentication whenever possible. So that as an individual and as a company, you should be implementing those processes. So incident reporting specifically for this incident, if you think you were a victim of it, you can call DoorDash's toll-free hotline, and they actually have a reference code that you can provide. More information and some other resources. I got this information from Bleeping Computer. Again, it's one of my favorite sites. CISA.gov will provide information on phishing and other cyber threats. And if you want, you can go to Have I Been Pawned to check your email, see if it's been compromised and known breaches. Those are just a couple. Summary and key takeaways. Humans are always the target. This is always your weakest link. No matter how much training you do, you are still vulnerable to one person or one incident. Data is fuel. Stolen contact information is perfect fuel for future highly targeted phishing attacks against you. MFA, multi-factor authentication, at this point should be non-negotiable for companies and for individuals. So again, enable multi-factor authentication today. Make sure you turn it on. Go through all your accounts, whether they're work or personal, especially go through everything in your head that you need, that you access, bank accounts, just your regular email accounts, accounts to your different services. Everything should have multi-factor. Credits and sources. Again, this particular presentation was based off of the bleeping computer information. I did go to the DoorDash response, and here it says their team recently identified and shut down a cybersecurity incident. And they say what happened. An employee was recently targeted in a social engineering scam. Response team identified the incident, shut down the unauthorized party's access, started an investigation. Who was affected? Investigation has determined that some users whose data is maintained, were affected in connection with the incident. Again, it goes through what data was accessed, first, last name, phone number, email, physical address, what data was not. So they're trying to emphasize or re-emphasize that no sensitive information like social security numbers were affected, or your driver's license or bank and credit card information. What are they doing? This tells you what they did. We talked about that. They deployed new enhancements to their security, implemented additional training, brought in an external firm to assist in the investigation, and referred the matter to law enforcement. And then here is the actual, that's not the right one. This is actually one of the previous data breaches. So this one was from September 2019, and although it's a long time ago, they definitely were a victim a few times of data breaches, and it's different holes that are going on, third parties, employees. So I think what they're doing is they're probably addressing the immediate problem, but then they're not going full board and assessing all of their weaknesses. And I'll be honest, it's hard to stop every employee from clicking on things. It's probably the hardest thing to do. And you want to train them, you want to educate them, but you also remember that they're victims too. And although you can get frustrated with employees who click on everything, I think it's just part of human nature. I don't think that that's going to change too much. You might be able to get them to focus once in a while and be observant. But there are times when people are busy, they're overloaded, they're stressed, they're expecting something similar, they're caught off guard, and they become victims. And then your company becomes a victim because of that. All right, so some of the images, the image sources, I did use Gemini to help create this, and the sources that I got images from were Microsoft and Vecteezy. And I think that is it. I appreciate you listening. Thank you. Have a good day, and talk to you next time. Bye-bye.